Anger once again spilling onto the streets in Indian-administered Kashmir. More mass protests sparked by another death of a rebel leader. Last week, security forces shot dead Sabza Ahmed Butt, a senior leader of Hizbul Mujahideen, the largest indigenous rebel group fighting against Indian rule in Kashmir. As news of his death spread, so did the violence. Hundreds of protesters threw rocks at Indian forces, who fired back with shotgun pellets and tear gas. In the wake of his death, authorities imposed a curfew, with businesses and schools locked down for several days. Butt's death echoes events that triggered the latest wave of unrest in Indian-administered Kashmir. In July, Hizbul Mujahideen leader Burhan Wani was killed by Indian forces. It sparked months of ongoing protests that have left scores of people dead and thousands injured. Butt's death comes amid rising concern over alleged brutality and human rights abuses by Indian security forces in Kashmir. Last month, this video surfaced on social media, showing a Kashmiri protester tied to an army jeep and allegedly used as a human shield. The army officer involved said he did this to save lives.
These things I have only done to save the local people. Had it been I have fired there would be more than 12 casualties, which I have not done. But with this idea, I have saved many people's lives.
While still under police investigation, he was awarded a commendation medal for his sustained efforts during counterinsurgency operations. There has also been criticism of the army's use of gun pellets to disperse crowds, inflicting wounds that are blinding protesters. But Indian security forces say their methods are necessary to protect against and control an increasingly violent insurgency. Will the death of another rebel leader further fuel the unrest that's gripped Kashmir? And if the violence escalates, will the military response increase to match it? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from New Delhi by Prem Shankar. He's the author of Kashmir 1947, The Origins of a Dispute, and the former editor of Hindustan Times. From London, Muzzammil Ayyub Thakur, who is the president of the World Kashmir Freedom Movement. And from Panchkula, India, Lieutenant General Baljit Singh Jaswal. He's the former army commander of Northern Command in Jammu and Kashmir. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Lieutenant General, if I could begin with you, sir. Do you endorse and support the current tactics by the Indian Army in Indian-administered Kashmir?
Mr. Imran, first of all, I take objection to your statement of Indian-administered Kashmir. Kashmir is very much part of India, so you can just make a mention in Kashmir.
This is the house style of the channel. This is the house style. It's a disputed region. This is what we call it.
That's your viewpoint. I have the right to express my viewpoint.
Sure, fair enough.
I have the right to express my viewpoint.
Okay, fair enough.
But notwithstanding that,
yes.
I totally support what the chief is saying. You see, it's very easy to say that rules of engagement need to be followed in letter and spirit. In a hybrid war of this nature, which is proxy and intent, and also a dirty war, your rules of engagement keep changing as per the situation. The simplest answer I would say is that if you really want to feel the heat, be in it.
What does that mean?
This officer, he took a decision to save the lives of many people. Had he not adopted this particular technique, he would have had to fire, couple of people would have died, and couple of people would have been injured. Now that's what it is. He was between the devil and the deep sea. He took initiative to save the lives, and this individual who was tied in front of the vehicle, it's a very innovative technique. Israel is doing it, other countries are doing it, and at the end of it, he was handed over to the police station.
So just because other countries use human shields, that makes it okay?
No, it is not a comparison whether other countries also using it. It is the circumstances I'm saying.
Okay.
I would ask anyone who's criticizing this, what would have you done if in case you were in a similar situation where you were pitched against a crowd of 900 people and you had to save the lives of the soldiers under command and the members of the election
Okay, but
commission
it's a
who were stuck
hypothetical
out
that
there?
he would have gone on to kill people had he not used this guy. Be that as it may, let me bring in Muzzammil Ayyub Thakur. Muzzammil, according to the Lieutenant General, the Indian Army is taking maximum precautions, it's adapting, it's doing what it can, and it's trying to save civilian lives. What do you think, Muzzammil?
I think it's complete nonsense. Over the last many years, we've heard from various Indian officials, be they governmental or the military, that they are planning something in Kashmir over the next year. They have an intention to change the landscape and the demographics inside Kashmir. Now, you talk about maximum restraint. I'm sorry, but you're talking half-truths, Lieutenant General. The fact that that young man had a piece of paper taped to his chest saying that I am a stone pelter, and that the army people were telling other people that this would be your situation if you tried to do anything. They were protecting themselves. You people have guns. These children have stones. You cannot compare. You compare yourselves to Israel. I'm telling you that is not a very good analogy, not in the international world. You've just put yourself into one foot into the grave. I'm sorry, but there is no maximum restraint. The Indian government and the Indian forces have been mercilessly killing people, not just for the last 70 years, but especially recently, over the last few years, especially the last few months.
Okay.
Ever since Burhan Wani was martyred.
Okay. Lieutenant General?
Yes. I like the way he is saying that these kids have got stones and these people have got weapons. That's what I'm saying. You want to feel the heat? Kindly go and sit with the security forces over there. Why should these people be pelting? No, if you have, then why did you cross the line? Who gives you the right to go in for agitational terrorism? The people of the security forces who are there, I'll just let me finish if you don't mind. The security forces who are there, they've been given a line of denial, for instance. Why should you cross that? If in case you violate the regulation,
Fair enough.
then you are responsible for your own action.
Fair enough, and that is a rhetorical question. I want to bring in Prem Shankar here. We have this narrative of a dirty war from the Indian Army, the Indian security forces. The guy who actually used that young man, Farooq Dar, as a human shield, Major Litul Gogoi, got a medal for doing so. What does this tell you about the current state of the conflict and the current tactics by the Indian Army, sir?
Well, first of all, it shows that the conflict can, on occasion, become quite severe. But let me do one thing for you. Let us separate the stone pelting and the feelings of the Kashmiris, what they want, their anger with India and the long-standing dispute, from the specific thing that this Major Gogoi did. In the specific circumstances in which he was placed, you have to understand one thing about the Indian Army. First of all, the security work, when you say 90 people, 70 people have been killed, has not been killed by the army. Whatever has been happening has been with the paramilitary forces, the Central Reserve Police Force and the Kashmir Police. The Kashmir Police leads and the Central Reserve Police Force goes with them. And they're the people who have been confronting the stone pelters and being injured. And I agree with the gentleman from Kashmir completely that guns are not the answer to stones. There are many other ways. The Kashmir police is the most ill-equipped for riot work that I have known. And this has been a situation, they've had 6-7 years to set things right. Nothing has been set right. Coming to Mr. Given that situation, a situation in which people have found that if we pelt stones on poorly equipped security forces, they will sooner or later reply with pellets and our political purpose will be fulfilled. A vicious circle has been created. And when this election took place, which was, I think, a very, very bad idea on the part of the Indian government, a stupid idea, if you ask me, it was a sort of a kind of a catalyst for all the forces to come together and say, we will not let this happen.
Okay, and for the sake of clarity, I know we're saying the army and the police, and I'm well aware of the CRPF, for example, But for the sake of clarity, at the moment, as we discuss this, especially for an international audience, when I refer to Indian forces, I'm going to refer to both, right? So the encounters with the CRPF and the Indian Army. And I hope you're okay with that, gentlemen. Let me bring in what the Army Chief had said.
May I suggest one thing? May I suggest one thing?
Sure. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, let's call them security forces on one side, and the army, when you specifically refer, as you're doing just now, to the army.
Okay, but
not security forces.
If we're talking of an encounter between authority versus protesters, right, I don't think we have to go too deep into making that distinction, but your point is well made and understood. Lieutenant General, I want to bring in what the Army Chief said, Bipin Rawat, where he said, in fact, I wish these people, instead of throwing stones at us, were firing weapons at us. Then I would have been happy. Then I could do what I want to do. I trust this is the best translation of the Hindi. I've seen it in multiple news reports. Sir, what does he mean by that? Because my interpretation is a very ominous one of that. You tell me what he means by that.
I will clarify it. You see, when he says that I wish they were firing, then the rules of engagement are straight. Today, a soldier is, caught in that quagmire of catch-22 situation. What happens is the stone throwers, they are lethal stones coming at the soldiers. We don't fire in the air. We have orders to shoot because Indian Army doesn't fire in the air. Now, if in case they are faced with such a situation, you have to fire back, and you have to fire at a stone pelter, and that too on his legs.
So wait, hold on.
If in case,
so it means you're throwing stones at me, and I feel bad that I have to shoot at you because you're throwing stones. It would be easier if you were shooting at me, so I could just, with a clearer conscience, shoot at you.
No. Please, sorry, don't put the words in my mouth, Mr. Imran.
Okay, so tell me again.
Very clear.
Tell me again.
Yeah, please. I'll tell you. You see, the soldier is in catch-22 situation. If he's being hit by stones, he is not, as per your contention, is not supposed to be firing back at them because they're holding stones. Do you know a stone, when it is thrown at a person, if it hits its head, what will happen? 3,500 security personnel got injured and were hospitalized in stone throwing. So, if the army is confronted with such a situation, he has to protect. He doesn't have any anti-riot gun. He's got his rifle and he'll shoot back to protect himself.
Okay.
I again repeat my statement that if you cross the line and you resort to agitational terrorism, you are responsible for your own actions, for the consequences.
Okay, you've made that crystal clear. Muzzammil, you were shaking your head in disagreement. Tell me why.
I find this completely hilarious. I mean, the Lieutenant General has just convicted or tried himself, described himself as a war criminal. I mean, he's talking about stones for bullets. I mean, it's impossible to compare the two. It really baffles me that he's able to talk about how there is restraint and we will countermeasure with pellets and bullets. And these are young children. And they don't stone pelt for the sake of stone pelting. They are reacting to the murders that is being committed by the armed forces inside Kashmir.
Okay, Lieutenant General, can you allow us to make the distinction between Hizbul Mujahideen and what they do and young people who are angry and take to the streets because they're angry with the fundamentals of this whole situation? They see their friends and their colleagues getting hurt, getting injured, getting killed, and they might pelt a stone at a security officer. Isn't there a distinction between the two?
I'm also laughing at this line which you use. It's hilarious, and it's for war crimes that this general should be tried or whatever it is. Anyway, that's his contention.
Okay.
I'll tell you what happens. The poisoning of minds has been induced by the constituency of Pakistan and India, the separatists. These children, they come out of sheer desperation, on coercion, or being forced. As a matter of fact, let me also share with you, I too have a lot of people very well known in the Kashmir Valley. I have relatives also over there. The groundswell is that the majority of the people, they are fed up. But the diktats of some of these, the terrorists, because of them, these people are coming out.
And that might be true,
We've
sir.
got
That might be
tapes
true.
now.
If you'd allow me to come in, I want to ask you again.
Just a second.
Those kids, if somebody's
Can I just
15
finish?
years old throwing stones at the security forces, should they be treated in the same way as a Hizbul
I'll
Mujahideen
just
fighter?
finish one line.
Sure. But should they be treated the same as a fighter?
No, no.
No, I just want to finish one line. Recently, there was a sting operation, and the kind of money which is being pumped in by Pakistan and the way these stone pelters are paid.
Can we leave
No,
Pakistan
they're
aside
coming
for a second, please, sir? I want to ask you again. Should they be treated the same as Hizbul Mujahideen? Should they be treated as terrorists because they're throwing stones at security forces, especially teenagers?
If a line of denial has been given, they should not be crossing that. And if in case any projectile is thrown, whether a stone or even petrol bomb for that matter, that is being hurled at the security forces, well, the SOP is there. He will warn the crowd, and he will open up with one single shot to give a message, do not cross this line. And if they do, the second round is fired. It is not that automatic fire is fired at these people.
Okay, let me
They're
bring it-
supposed to adhere.
Okay, we've neglected Prem Shankar Jha, and I apologize for that, sir. Please, you want to come in?
I'm afraid so. I would like to. Look, I think we've completely misunderstood what, forgive me for saying this, I really have to emphasize this. I think we've misunderstood what the army chief said. The army chief's expression was an expression of anguish, of being torn in two directions. What he's saying is, there's enormous inhibition in the army against firing on anyone who's civilian, particularly anyone unarmed. For the army, a stone pelter is an unarmed civilian. He said, look, if they had guns, I would be able to fire on them with a clear conscience. That's what he's saying. And please do not twist this around and turn it into some kind of a giant statement about the brutality of the Indian state. It's one particular situation.
But sir, I'm taking the words of the Indian army chief, and I'm asking, what does this mean?
Our Pakistani counterpart, they're pretty blunt too. You see, I don't approve of any kind of use of weapons against stone pelters. By the way, I have been pelted. You know, those stones come at 90 miles an hour. The question is not that. In spite of that, there is no excuse for using bullets or even pellets upon people who are throwing stones at you. You have to find another way, and if you don't, then it's a failure of the state. But I'm talking about the predicament of that major and the way, I think, rather stupidly, if you are, I have to say this, the army chief has sort of come out. But his specific statement that you mentioned just now is a statement of being torn in different directions.
Okay. And we've had three different...
I don't agree with our general.
Sure,
I don't
we've
want
had
to take
three
this
different
majesty in
interpretations
my
of it, and
own.
that's
the
fine.
army shall do this, the army shall do this, the army shall do exactly what the civilians tell them to do.
Okay, and we've had three different interpretations of it, so that's good, right? He said it, I asked a question, and we have three different interpretations. Let me move on and go to Muzzammil, because that election was mentioned a bit earlier on. And Muzzammil, at that election, there was 7% turnout. People are fed up, people are taking to the streets, people are pelting security forces, yes, and it's to deadly effect, especially for the protesters. What does that 7% turnout in the last by-election say about political apathy in the valley and about whether these people actually feel as if they belong to this society?
You see, the Kashmiris have never felt that they've belonged to Indian society. We've been persecuted, subjugated, occupied for the last 70 years. It's a natural progress. It's a natural situation whereby people will no longer go to the polls because they've seen that their mothers, their brothers, their fathers, their sons, everybody in their families have been persecuted, molested, raped, killed. I mean, we're coming to the 8th anniversary. Just a couple of days ago was the 8th anniversary of the Shupian double rape case. I mean, these things are not forgotten in history. People will remember these things. When it comes to the elections are not such a big thing that we need to be worried about. I mean, this is called for administration within the state. It has nothing to do with the sentiment of freedom. If the Indian government or the Indian army or anybody, these academics that claim to be friends of Kashmir, let them pressure the government, let them pressure the BJP and the RSS or whoever is backing these violent terrorists, in the garb of Indian Army, let them allow a plebiscite or a referendum inside Kashmir. And let us once and for all.
And I want to do this. I want to interrupt you now because I want to do this another time, and I want to talk about the actual political optics here, and whether that plebiscite has to happen or so. It's been 70 years. It's still unresolved. It's not a great situation on the ground. Gentlemen, I've got to move on. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. It's important that we have this discussion. Prem Shankar, Muzzammil Ayyub Thakur, and Lieutenant General Baljit Singh Jaswal, thank you very much for joining us.